As someone who has spent her career helping others overcome challenges, what is the first thing you thought of when you realized this situation may be unprecedented?
Well, I realized that there's a possibility for us to have both positive and negative reactions and emotions and experiences that come out of it. That's because it's human nature to like predictability. We are hardwired to want to know what is happening in our lives. And look what's happened in such a short period of time. We've gone from handshakes and hugs to fist pumping to keeping 6 foot distance and not even socializing with others in parts of the country. And so when we feel uncertain like this and have changes in such a rapid period of time, we tend to feel threatened and unsafe, and it stresses us out. And this is a protective reaction that our body has because it gets us more aware and prepared for the unknown. But this also causes this feeling of uncertainty, which results in a feeling of helplessness about aspects of our lives.
So how has COVID-19 pandemic affected you so far?
Well, it powerfully and very interestingly so, I found that personally, it's kind of like throwing a stone in the pond. There's a plunk, and then you've got the extra ripples that come out of it that extend outward. But I felt initially I was most concerned about those that I care and love, such as my 95 and 94-year-old parents over on the East Coast. I'm in California. They're 3,000 miles away. I'm not able to visit them. Their family support is limited. My mother's legally blind, and so there's a social isolation there. I was very concerned and got developed communication with my brothers, and we're trying to see what we could do in terms of outreach. Also helping an old dog learn tricks here. My father at 95 is having to learn how to become a little more savvy about ordering things. What I saw is that he's able to develop that resilience and and um, and take care of his food, his basic needs. I also saw the compassion from some neighbors. He mentioned making muffins and bring them over. New people, not people he had a relationship with. That's really heartwarming. I had another concern. My daughter and her fiance, they're in the Midwest. My daughter um, is an anti-hoarder. She says, my goodness, Mom, if people would just go out and buy 2 items, then we wouldn't have all this hoarding issue. And I'm thinking, oh my gosh, that's the mother in me saying, yeah, but if you're the only one not hoarding and collecting things that supplies, then what's to become of you? So they're managing. Actually, they're managing real well. And I'm proud of her living an uncompromising, value-driven life, not easily influenced by others. And then we've got my husband. We were supposed to take a trip out there to the Midwest and visit her. And the doctor told him emphatically 5 times in the appointment, he told me, absolutely do not go, because he was in a high risk category. And so I'm seeing it professionally too. My clients and people around me are reaching out more, and yet we're looking at ways that we can find benefit in this experience, find some positive that comes out of it.
Are you in a shelter in place or a lockdown?
Yes, living in California, this is a moving target here. It changes all the time. So there are 40 million of us who are in the shutdown mode. We're supposed to shelter in place as an effort to slow down the spread of the virus. Our governor, Governor Newsom, I think did a wise thing. What he did is he did it incrementally so as to reduce the shock that we would all experience. And first it was shutting down, telling us to stay at home, then slowly cutting the schools, and then the theme parks, then saying only 10 people can congregate together, then it's stay indoors, only go out to walk your dog and exercise. And in doing so, he reduced the shock to us, got us to buy into it, which I think is really important. And in doing so, we felt more in control and more likely to participate as a team effort that we all need in the country in contributing to stemming the pandemic.
Hmm. How does one cope with a situation like this with changes, but no previous blueprint around how to cope?
You're right. You're right. I think a lot of people are asking that question. The thing is, we don't get to choose whether or not we're going to go through this pandemic. What we do get to choose is how we can respond to it. And that's the piece that we can't forget. We can do so by taking breaks from the news and the social media. Actually, I'm a news junkie, and so that has been difficult for me and yet very rewarding. Making sure that we take care of ourselves, get the sleep, the nutrition, staying present, utilizing mindfulness activities, meaning uh, when we're finding ourselves worrying, which is going too much in the future, or thinking about what we haven't done, going in the past, and being irritated with ourselves about it, allowing ourselves non-judgmentally to just be here and develop an awareness maybe of our sensory experiences. For my clients, I've um, uh, made a progressive relaxation uh, tape for them that they can listen to, that people can find on different sources. And it's a matter of learning how to relax really from the hair stems on your head all the way down to your toes. When we are more grounded, we feel more in control. I'll also suggest to people reframing a situation that they're in and looking at it in a different perspective and not expecting perfection out of ourselves. If we can look at the small accomplishments that we can make, or changes in our thinking, then we really have to recognize that we've done our personal best for that day. And so that's helpful.
So, how do you suggest that other people continue to keep going? And you made some suggestions, but also how do they support others who are really feeling in despair?
I think we need to listen to others and recognize that everybody responds differently to a situation. Sometimes it depends on what their personal history is. If they've had traumatic events recently, then they're coming in sort of with a, a, a cup less full, and we have to appreciate that. So we also have to listen to others and determine if we're hearing changes in them. Are they having difficulty sleeping, concentrating, eating? Um, Little things we can do to help them are going far. And I'm seeing this really play out well with small gestures. We might be socially isolated, I mean, physically isolated from each other, but it doesn't mean we have to be socially isolated. We can call, text, send notes to each other, share positive experiences. I see a lot of upbeat stuff coming across my phone and text. And it's also an opportunity for us to say, well, here we are in this situation, it's time limited. What can we do perhaps to pursue other activities or interests that we might not have otherwise allowed ourselves the time to do with this? And most importantly, I think it's really learning how to, ensuring that we hold on to hope.
Let's talk about parents for a minute. When parents are forced to change their living or working situation overnight, what are the considerations, the things to watch out for, surprising ideas, things like that?
Well, we have to remember that children and teens are going to react very differently than adults, and they're going to be greatly influenced by how they see the adults around us responding. When parents can calmly talk with their children about the COVID-19 and present it in a confident manner that they are taking care of their family, they'll be able to provide the best support for their children. But we also have to understand that not all children and teens respond in the same way to this type of threat. But knowing that, we can look at some commonalities, such as we can not be surprised if our children regress to some extent. And they're particularly young children, if they're already potty trained, you might find them wetting their bed at night or becoming more needy. Children might show an increased difficulty with concentration or attention, or more worry or sadness. Or explain, it may come out somatically with their complaining about headaches or body aches. And but just things that parents can do really to support their kids by taking the time out to talk with them about this virus and what it means, but doing so at an age appropriate level. Sometimes with the youngest children, it's give them a little information and wait to hear if they're asking for more. They may have gotten as much as they need. Also, don't assume that what you told them is retained. They may need to hear it a few times. They're under stress. But you also have to realize that you want them to come to you, not social media or someone else, to get their facts. We can reassure, as parents, we can reassure our kids that they're going to be safe and that their feelings are valid, that it's okay to feel upset. Their lives have been turned upside down in such a major way. They've had their social network and structure ripped out from them with almost no notice, meaning with school being gone. They're having to deal with us, many of us trying to handle our jobs, not knowing how to do it with the kids. I was talking with one individual today, and he was had worked from the closet, and so that he could get some privacy from his kids. And the child opened the door and said, "Dad, what are you doing in the closet?" And he was in a meeting. So we all understand what's going on. But as parents, I think it's a whole lot about being a role model taking care of ourselves. Sometimes as parents, we put ourselves second and focus on taking care of the children's needs.
How do you explain to children when there are potentially long-term changes, to how they live and their way of life, particularly schooling, like online schooling? And then all these things we've taught them, like shaking hands, no, they can't do that anymore. What have you learned about retraining?
Well, I think it's about teaching that, helping. There's a lot of lessons that we give our kids in life. And one I think that's important is being able to be flexible. We don't have control over what happens to us oftentimes, but we can have influence over how we respond to it. Doing so with humor. Humor goes a far way. Being able to create new traditions about embracing people and how to connect with others can be really helpful. And then we also get into the before. I think what can really help us is if we prepare ahead for some types of disasters. Like we didn't have plan opportunity to prepare for this one. It pretty much just came on us. But we can say, all right, going forward, this is how we're going to handle these things. And uh, so that the children have a greater sense of control over themselves. And I think by providing children as an opportunity to talk about what their concerns are and know that they can come to the parents and get facts and reassurance that life will go back to normal, that we will, and while parents have concerns as well, that it will resume. And I think that would be comforting.
What effect do you think this will have on future social interactions?
Well, people are wondering if all this isolation is going to result in people wanting to be isolated. But, we're not going to go forward alone. And we're really not even alone now. People are creating very interesting ways of remaining creative, connected with each other. The only thing is we're not touching. And the important thing that we really need in humanity is the human touch. And when you think about it, we came about in life because of human touching and connection. And touching does a whole lot to us. And so I think we're going to be hungry for that and reaching out for that. Touching is kind of like free medicine. It can reduce our blood pressure and reduce our cortisol levels, which are our stress hormones. And therefore, it can have an impact on depression and anxiety and our mood.
How do you think the future in general will be affected?
Perhaps we'll find ourselves reevaluating our values and our priorities, and maybe even discard that which isn't working well for us. It may be how we set our goals. Oftentimes, our goals are set on typically on tangible or external accomplishments. We never ask our children when they're little, do you want to be happy and loved? Rather, do you want to be a fireman or a doctor, right? So instead of the over focus perhaps on getting a certain job and buying a house with a certain amount of square footage, it might be a little bit more on relationships, because our focus will be more on establishing this as a goal. Having happiness and being loved might be more of a focus because we realize that we're doing without it. And I think we may be finding ourselves to function more like a vampire bat. Now, we all think that vampire bats are not something very desirable, and I'm not suggesting that we go out there and be sucking everybody's blood, but what they do is they show the female vampire bats experience gratitude, and gratitude for a vampire bat can save the other one's life, because vampire bats must feed at least once every 3 days. And if they miss a meal, then they can die. But not to worry, because altruism from female bats ensures that the hungry bat will get a meal. They will share some of the meal with them. However, they only share the blood with a bat that has shared in exchange. So the non-reciprocity in bats can cause them to actually starve. And so maybe our immediate future and the days ahead will find us that we can function more like the vampire bats, giving to others, such as checking in on them, asking about people's welfare, dropping muffins off at their house, and in turns, we'll receive from others. Our social relationships will be strengthened, and we'll be in a position to be able to achieve more because we're feeling loved and happy.
Well, thank you so much for your advice and your thoughts. Do you have anything else you'd like to add?
Well, perhaps I'd just like to say that we can focus on our losses. But the trouble with this is that can create a downward emotional spiral. Or we can think about how we're going to express our gratitude today.
Well, thank you so much, Eileen. You can listen to her personal podcast, which is coming up soon, on Trailblazers Impact, and shop for her book on www.trailblazersimpact.com. And stay safe.
Thank you.